My English learning journey from silence to finding my voice. Everyone in the classroom was laughing, so I laughed too. Not because I understood the joke, but because I didn't want to look lost. I didn't want anyone to realize that I was the only one who didn't understand. For a few seconds, laughing felt safer than silence. It happened during one of my first classes after I moved to the United States, and I still remember what happened next. As I walked back to my room that morning, one question kept repeating in my mind. Have I really been studying English all these years? I opened my notebook that night. It was full of English words I had memorized for years, but in that moment, I couldn't say a single one out loud. And that's when I realized something. I didn't really know English. I had only been studying it. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is a little different. Instead of practicing English together, I want to tell you a story, my story. If someone had told me 5 years ago that I would one day make videos entirely in English, I probably would have smiled and said, that's impossible. Not because I didn't love English, but because for a long time, English was something I studied, not something I lived. There was a time I was afraid to say even one sentence out loud, afraid of mistakes, afraid of being judged, afraid of silence after I spoke. But today, I am still learning. I still make mistakes, but something inside me has changed. I am no longer trying to be perfect. I am just trying to be heard. And maybe that's what finding your voice really means. So let's begin. Chapter 1. More than 20 years. Like many students in my country, I started learning English in middle school. More than 20 years ago, I opened my first English textbook, and I actually fell in love with the language. I was genuinely drawn to English. I love learning new words. I love the feeling of stepping into a completely different world through language. But there was one problem. My family didn't have the means to send me to English centers. So English stayed confined to the classroom. It never made it into real life. It was never a tool for communication. It was a subject, a test, a grade, and I was good at it. I memorized endless vocabulary lists. I crammed grammar rules for exams. I focused on getting high scores. On paper, everything looked perfect, but in real life, it was different. If someone asked me, how is you doing? I would freeze completely. My mind just went blank. Not because I didn't know English, but because I had never actually used it in real conversation. I had never put it into practice. And slowly, a quiet belief started to grow inside me. Maybe speaking English just wasn't meant for me. Starting over at 31. At 31 years old, I made one of the biggest decisions of my life. I decided to study abroad. It wasn't just a decision. It felt like I was starting over from scratch. For many people, that's a town life is already settling down, a career, a family, and a clear direction. But for me, everything felt uncertain. I wasn't chasing perfect English. I was searching for something deeper, a voice. Not just the ability to speak English, but the ability to express myself freely, to ask questions without hesitation, to join conversations instead of standing outside them, to stop translating every thought in my head. That was the voice I was looking for. Chapter 3. The old story in my head. I still remember my first English class. The moment I walked in, I immediately felt something. I was the oldest student in the room. Everyone else looked confident. They spoke English with ease. They laughed without hesitation. It felt like English was something they had already grown into. Then it was my turn, and I froze. Every sentence felt like I had to force it out of my mouth. Every word felt heavier than it should have been. I wasn't just afraid of mistakes. I was afraid of being remembered as the one who couldn't speak. That thought stayed in my head, and it made everything worse. Growing up in the countryside, my accent naturally shaped my English. Sometimes I would say a word, and people would misunderstand it completely. And I would just smile, hoping they didn't notice my nervousness. Inside, I felt like I was always one step behind. And I kept asking myself, did I start too late? Do I really belong here? Chapter 4. 15 minutes. One day something shifted inside me. Instead of asking, why am I not good enough? I started asking, what is one small thing I can do today? And the answer was surprisingly simple. 15 minutes, just 15 minutes a day. Every night, I would sit in a quiet room. The world outside would slow down. I put on my headphones, opened a short video, and started shadowing the speaker, sentence by sentence, again and again and again. Some nights I recorded my voice, listened back, and immediately wanted to delete it because I didn't like how I sounded. But I forced myself to continue, not because it was easy, but because I was committed to improving. And slowly, something changed. Confidence didn't come first. Practice came first, and confidence followed. Chapter 5. When English became real. Then I moved to the United States, and everything changed. Suddenly, English was everywhere, but I didn't sound like textbooks anymore. People said things like, what's up? How's it going? You good? At first, I thought I was missing something, that there was a version of English I had never learned, a hidden layer. Then came that classroom moment. The professor told a joke. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. But a few seconds later, I realized something painful. I had no idea what was funny. By the time I understood, the moment had already passed. I just sat there quietly, and that feeling stayed with me longer than the lecture. That morning, walking back across campus, I felt something heavy inside me, not in my backpack, but in my mind. A quiet question I couldn't escape. Do I really belong here? Chapter 6. The Ocean. One thing nobody tells you about learning English is this. The better you get, the more you realize how far you still have to go. It feels like standing in front of an endless ocean. Every time you learn 10 new words, it felt like 100 more appeared. Some days I felt progress. Other days I felt like I was going backwards. Learning English was never a straight path. It was a series of ups and downs, like waves in the ocean. Sometimes they carry me forward, sometimes they pull me back. But over time, I started noticing something small but powerful. I could order food without rehearsing. I could understand jokes instantly. I could join conversations without translating everything in my head. These weren't big moments, but they were turning points, and they reminded me that I was moving forward, even when I couldn't see it clearly. Chapter 7. Finding my voice. Eventually, I stopped chasing perfection and started noticing progress. The first lecture I understood. The first time I spoke in a group discussion. The first presentation I gave in English. The first time I laughed without thinking about grammar. These were not dramatic moments, but they were real and they mattered. And now I am sitting here speaking to you. Not because my English is perfect, but because I am no longer afraid of making mistakes. And for me, that's what finding my voice really means. Why I created this channel. I did not create this channel because I'm an expert or because I have reached the end of my journey. I created it because I'm still working it. And I know I am not alone. There are many people out there who feel exactly the same way I once did. So, I want this space to be simple. A place to learn together, to make mistakes together, to grow together. Because language is not about perfection. It is about courage in communication. Looking back, I realized something important. Learning English was never just about grammar or vocabulary. It was about becoming someone who is no longer afraid to speak. That voice I once tried to hide is the same voice speaking to you today. So, if you're struggling right now, don't measure yourself by how far you still have to go. Measure yourself by how far you have already come, because small steps matter more than you think. 5 years ago, I was afraid to say even one sentence. Today, I'm sharing my story with you, and maybe 5 years from now, you will be telling yours too, and I hope I will get to hear it.